Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's 5:30 p.m. and the live stream has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Council. I see that we have quorum, so I call into session this public meeting under the Planning Act for Monday, July 11th, 2022. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would like to take time to recognize former Mayor Ralph Beamer, who passed away on June 29th in his 87th year. Ralph was a dedicated community leader, a third-generation fruit farmer, co-owner of Beamer's Country Market, and served as a Pelham councillor from 1992 to 94, and then as mayor from 1995 to 2003. During his term with Pelham, Beamer represented the town at Regional Council and served on several committees, including the Regional Finance Committee. He continued to be an active member of the community after leaving the mayor's office in 2003 and served many years on the Ontario Tender Fruit Marketing Board. He also served on the Ontario Crop Insurance Commission and was a member of the Fenwick and Thorold Lions. On a personal note, I did not know Mr. Beamer that well, which is why I was pleasantly surprised when he reached out to me after I was elected Ward 1 councillor, suggesting we meet so that he could give me advice as to the do's and don'ts of being a councillor. I jumped at the chance, and his words did indeed serve me well. My condolences to his wife and family members. Please join me in a minute of silence as we reflect on the service of Ralph Beamer while keeping his family and friends in our thoughts during this difficult time. Okay, thank you very much, Council, for your indulgence on this. Now we will hear from Councillor Hildebrand as he reads the land acknowledgement statement. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gathered. It's the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Abenishani peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hildebrand, and I now turn to the Deputy Clerk and her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask Ms. Miller to please share her screen. Public meeting under the Planning Act, Monday, July 11th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. All Town of Pelham in-person public meetings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all meetings electronically via Zoom. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject applications. Participants are reminded, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants will remain in the waiting room until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, your microphone will be muted and staff will turn off your camera. The Zoom chat is not monitored nor recommended to contact the Clerk's Department during the meeting. Please contact us via email at clerks@pelham.ca. This email address is being monitored during the meeting. Decorum. The public meeting under the Planning Act is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note that all comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will also not be tolerated. Please note that if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note that after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak to the applicant and agent will have an opportunity to address the public comments and/or concerns at one time. Please note that all comments stated and received electronically form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing their recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for the application in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is to follow on the presentation. Contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the adoption of the agenda. I have an amendment put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda be amended to add item 4.3.1. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on the amendment, councillors? Not seeing any. Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Therefore, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda for the July 11th, 2022 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on this amendment? Not seeing any. Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to the disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Okay, thank you. After viewing the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, I have noted. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item number 4, and I will now read the notice requirements into the record. Town of Pelham applications for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment, property north of Tanner Drive, east of Pelham Street, and west of Line Avenue, known as Tanner Extension, file numbers 26T19-03-2021 and AM-12-2021. Draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use of the property for 11 lots for single detached dwellings, 2 blocks for 10 townhouse dwellings, and 1 block for park. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 and 51 that Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed applications. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this request. Notice of the meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on June 17, 2022. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendments. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will also be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow shortly. If a person or body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they are not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed applications, and therefore any comments received will be considered by Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have our senior planner, Shannon Larocque, with us this evening. Shannon, you may proceed.
Okay. Ms. Larocque, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going to share my screen. This public meeting is for a development known as Tanner Extension. The applications are for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. The property is located east of Pelham Street, west of Line Avenue, and north of Tanner Drive. The application for subdivision would create 11 lots for single detached dwellings, 2 blocks for 10 townhouse dwellings, and 1 block for parkland, along with the future roadways. The zoning bylaw amendment application will rezone the site to a site-specific residential 2, site-specific residential multiple 1, and a site-specific open space zone. Those zones would permit the uses that are proposed in the subdivision. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. It proposes an extension of Tanner Drive north. The future street townhouse dwellings are proposed along the west side of the extension of Tanner Drive, and the future single detached dwellings are proposed along this Street A, so backing along onto the homes that are currently on Wilson Crossing. And this block 14 here is the block that's being reserved for future parkland. This block is, the first part of a future park. The intention is that as lands around this area develop, more lands are acquired and brought together to form a larger neighborhood park. And these lands are part of what's known as Lot 177 in Fonthill. These lands have long been contemplated for intensification and redevelopment, and the lands that these applications are subject to are shown in blue here. In 2015, the town hired the planning partnership to undertake a public consultation process and come up with a development concept in terms of how these remaining lands in Lot 177 could be developed, with a number of considerations in mind. Those considerations included providing a number of different housing types, compatibility with the surrounding land uses, natural heritage features that may exist on the property, what a future road network in this location should look like, where active transportation connections should be provided. And that was arrived at through meetings with the landowners in this area, as well as town staff. And then following that process in 2016, the council at the time endorsed this recommended development concept, which is known as Concept E. So with respect to the applications that are under consideration right now, the road network is very reflective of what's shown in Concept E. The main difference between Concept E and what's proposed through these applications is that there are single detached dwellings proposed in this area, where Concept E showed low-rise apartments. The developer for Tanner Extension subdivision has provided an alternative concept that shows that a low-rise apartment block could still be provided in this area and meet the density that's required for this area overall. And still achieve the goal of providing a mix of housing types in this area, even if this portion is developed for single detached dwellings. And in terms of the planning framework for this property, it's located within a settlement area in the provincial policy statement and within the delineated built-up area in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. These areas are intended to be where residential intensification and redevelopment happen. And it's intended that redevelopment in this area makes use of existing and planned services, so we don't have to extend services. And that, a number of housing options are provided so that we can have complete communities and people can age in place. In the region's official plan, the property is within the urban area and the designated built-up area. This area is intended to accommodate a range of land uses. It's the focus of residential and employment intensification over the long term. And there's a minimum intensification target of 15% for the town of Pelham. So all development that takes place in the town, 15% annually is supposed to happen within the designated built-up area. The town's official plan designates the property as urban living area and built boundary. It's also shown with a star for potential intensification area. The urban living area and built boundary supports all types of residential uses. And there are policies in the official plan that require that intensification and redevelopment proposals achieve the type of density that's in keeping with the character of what surrounds it in the neighborhood. There are also specific policies in our official plan for lots 177, and those policies require a mix of housing types that would ensure affordability. There are policies that ensure that adequate parkland is going to be acquired, that development takes place in a phased in and orderly manner, that roadways are interconnected and active transportation linkages are provided, and finally that environmental protection is given where warranted. And the town zoning bylaw zones the property as R1H right now, so residential 1 holding. The holding is in place until such time that a subdivision is approved on the lands. And the request is that the property is rezoned to site-specific residential 2, residential multiple 1, and open space zones to permit the uses that are proposed. The site-specific residential 2 zone, the changes that are from our standard zone requirements in the R2, and this is what would apply for the single detached dwellings, is a front yard of 4 meters to the building face and 6 meters to the garage, a side yard of 1.2 meters, an exterior side yard on a corner lot of 3 meters, and a rear yard of 6 meters. The site-specific residential multiple 1 zone that would apply to the street townhouses would reduce the required lot area to 188 square meters per interior unit. It would require a front yard of 6 meters, a side yard on a corner lot of 3 meters, a side yard on an interior lot at 1.5 meters, and a rear yard at 6 meters. And the final change would be the request to delete the requirement for a planting strip where abutting an R1 or R2 zone. The requested site-specific open space zone would only add a special exception for the lot area. And that's to recognize that the lot that's being created at this time for the park doesn't meet the standard zoning requirement of 0.8 hectares. Right now, it's only 497 square meters, but as development happens in this area, that park will grow. A number of comments were received on these applications. The region advised that they have no objection subject to their requested conditions. Bell Canada, Enbridge, Hydro One, and Canada Post requested standard conditions of approval. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority had no comments or concerns. Fire requested that cul-de-sacs have to provide an adequate turnaround facility. So currently the roads in the subdivision dead end until future development takes place. And so it would be necessary for the developer to provide turnaround facilities. And there is also the requirement that all units be sprinklered. Public Works had no concerns, and Pelham Active Transportation supported the pedestrian pathways and linkages to other areas. They supported the sidewalks that met disability accessibility requirements. There had to be a sidewalk on one side of the road. They would prefer 2, but they were happy that at least one side is being provided. Some comments were received from members of the public. At the time that this presentation was prepared, they're listed on here. The others I'll just go over verbally. Brad and Donna Gautreau were concerned that the draft plan is not consistent with Concept E, which was previously endorsed by council. They did not want development proceeding in a manner that could affect the ability for the town to acquire the desired parkland in the area. Susan Turner believes that the development should not occur on these lands until an access to Bacon Lane is provided. She's concerned that the only access to the main roads is Sadler Street and Homestead Boulevard, which could become blocked at times. We also received comments from Lisa Ugolini, who's opposed to two-story dwellings backing onto the homes on Wilson Crossing due to privacy concerns. She feels it would ruin the aesthetics of their neighborhood if they're two-story dwellings, because all of the existing dwellings on Wilson Crossing are bungalows. And Renata Thomas, she would also like bungalows backing onto the homes on Wilson Crossing. She's also concerned about the aesthetics of the neighborhood. A number of technical reports were provided with these applications, including an environmental impact study, a functional servicing report, a geotechnical report, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments, and a planning justification report. And if anyone wishes to review copies of these reports, please contact me and I'm happy to share them. And as stated earlier, there are no decisions being made tonight or recommendations coming forward from planning staff. We're here to receive information and provide information. And once we have all of that, we will consider all of the submitted materials and the comments and prepare a recommendation report for council's consideration. If anyone has questions following tonight's meeting or wishes to receive notices of council's decision in future, please contact me at extension 319 or by email asktherock@pelham.ca.
Great. Thank you for that report, Ms. LaRock. I turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have the agent, Mr. Hycoop, in the meeting with us this evening. I would ask Ms. Miller to please bring him into the meeting. And I do understand Mr. Hycoop has a presentation, so he may share his screen.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Shah, you have the floor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just share my screen here and bring up the presentation.
Oh, so, yeah.
It's not wanting to show on my right screen. Anyhow, I'm just going to go through things slide by slide. I apologize for the PowerPoint title block behind us. But anyhow, good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is William Hycoop. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants. As noted, I'm here today representing the owners of the subject lands regarding applications for draft plan of subdivision and the associated zoning bylaw amendment. I have a brief presentation for you this evening. The subject lands, a lot of this information was covered by Shannon, but anyhow, the subject lands are 0.99 hectares or 2.44 acres in size and are rectangular. You can see them highlighted in yellow on the screen. As noted, it is at the existing end of Tanner Drive. There is a commercial property located directly to the west fronting Pelham Road. They are surrounded by vacant lands to the north and to the east. And to the south, there is the existing Tanner Drive and Wilson Crossing residential area comprised of single detached and townhouse dwellings. As indicated, the lands are designated in the official plan as in the urban living area. However, there are some specific policies to this area known as Lot 177, and they are currently zoned as R1 with a holding provision. So some supporting studies were submitted with the application. This includes the environmental site assessment, which concludes there are no major issues identified with the existing soils. An environmental impact study was completed to assess the health of the surrounding wooded area. No significant species were identified and confirms there is no impact from the proposed development. A functional servicing study and stormwater management report was completed, demonstrating that there is enough existing servicing capacity within the existing sewer network and that the existing infrastructure is enough to accommodate the proposed development. Lastly, a planning justification report was prepared to address the required policy context, including the existing official plan policy regarding Lot 177, specifically that we are required to meet the 50 people and jobs per hectare density requirement, which we've done. Just to provide an overview of the draft plan of subdivision, Tanner Drive is extended approximately 75 meters to the north and introduces a new street, Street A, which tees off of Tanner Drive heading east, and that extension is approximately 200 meters. On the west side in orange, you can see the 2 blocks, 1 block of 6 and 1 block of 4 townhouses. This would back onto the existing commercial area, while the new Street A on the east side would provide for 11 new single detached dwellings. On the northeast corner of the plan, you can see the green open space area that is proposed for the dedication to the town for parkland. And as indicated, it's anticipated that as development continues in this area, that park will grow in size to reach the contemplated Concept E overall plan. Generally speaking and overall, the proposal provides for a previously contemplated and logical extension to the existing residential area. We've done what we can with the existing ownership area, and while there are some minor revisions to the preferred concept, we feel that the proposed singles on Street A are appropriate and do not preclude the future development of a low-rise apartment down the road. Overall, by providing both the townhouses, the single attached dwellings, and the park area, we feel that we are providing a good mix of dwelling types that are similar to those in the existing Lot 177 area, and allows for any future neighboring parcels outside of ownership to develop in accordance with the preferred street pattern. Ultimately, we feel that the application and submitted studies demonstrate that the development is good planning and is something that should be able to move forward. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you for your time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kernahan, and my apologize to misrepresented you in the introduction. Thank you. And the Deputy Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the public portion of the meeting, and we do have a public speaker with us this evening. I would ask Ms. Miller to please bring in our speaker, Mr. Jim Shaw. Hello, Mr. Shaw. We do see that you are in the meeting. If you'd like to unmute yourself and proceed with your comments.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for letting me have a few comments to the meeting. I guess it was some of the main concerns. One was covered in that letter that was sent into the council regarding the facade on the front of the buildings, if they're going to keep with the current area and blend in. Mainly with the townhomes, if someone could have kind of answers on that, what they're going to be, and the houses, which I'm assuming will be similar to the homes that are here now. The one thing when you're mapping, you showed only a pathway going over to Line Avenue and over to Bacon Lane. Does that mean that there's no future consideration for roadway to those areas? Is it only going to be, because there is right now a small little extension on Bacon Lane to go into that spot, that lot or lots. And I'm just wondering if that is still in the works to do that, or is all traffic, as that person made comment, go down Tanner and out either Homestead or Sadler. And are the homes going to be a bungalow style? And same with the townhomes, are they going to be a bungalow style homes? I think that was pretty well some of the concerns that I had, and also completion dates. Do we know what kind of completion dates we're looking at for the units or the development? So those are my questions.
Okay, Mr. Shaw, we will address your questions in a minute or two once we have written correspondence. Is that right, Deputy Clerk? Yes, we will get to your questions in a few minutes, Mr. Shaw.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does conclude our public speakers on this file. Having said this, I will just confirm that we've received no emails. And it is 6:02 p.m. and we have received no emails. Therefore, you may close the public portion of the meeting and move to committee input.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps, Ms. LaRock, you heard the questions put forward by Mr. Shaw. Do you have answers for him at this time?
I can respond to some of the questions. Some of them I may pass over to the developer's representative, though, Mr. Haiku.
Okay.
In terms of the extension of roadways, I mean, it is intended long-term that, yes, the roads are connected, that there is a connection to Bacon Lane, as well as the extension of Tanner. Through this subdivision, that's not occurring just because the other lands are not developing at this time. So it would be necessary to have turnarounds built within this development on a temporary basis until those roadways are extended. In terms of the completion dates, whether they're going to be bungalows and the facades of the buildings, I'm going to pass that along to the agent.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kernahan, any comments on those?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, at this point in time, what we've come forward with the zoning application would allow for a good bungalow-sized envelope. So that's really the intention of the way that we've set up this zoning, is to allow for that built form to happen. Now, the building height permitted under the zoning currently allows for 2 stories, but like I said, we're looking at doing bungalows here. At this point, in terms of the front facades, I don't have a specific builder. Right now, the owners are just developers, but they have been in conversations with the local builder and are hoping to move forward in that direction so that there is something quite compatible and similar to the surrounding area. So that is our intention at this point in time. Then just in terms of a completion date, at this point, obviously, we're subject to council's approval, and if we're able to move forward, we'd be looking at doing a detailed engineering design through this fall and hopefully getting it to the ground as soon as we can. House construction would hopefully start sometime next year and take place for about a year or so. So I hope that answers questions, but if there's any follow-ups, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, I have to extend my apologies to you. My report in front of me had you identified as Matt Kernahan, and you are indeed Will Haycoop. So thank you for making the presentation, and please accept my apologies. Mr. Shaw, are you still there? Oh, okay. So we'll just go on? Okay. So now next is Madame Clerk, the written correspondence. Do you have to read that in?
No, but committee is free to debate and discuss.
Okay. So now we go to council then. Any questions or comments from councilors on either the planner's report or the applicant's report? And we'll go to Councilor Wink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Haycoop. The demonstration plan just shows the two streets terminating at a blunt end. The Niagara region requires turning radius for the garbage trucks, and also the town fire trucks need a turning radius. Is the cul-de-sacs going to be developed on this land, or is there a little bit of land at the end of each street that the developer owns that they'll be able to create those turning radiuses?
Mr. Haycoop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor. What is typical in these scenarios where there is a dead-end street that would be extended in the future, what we would do is actually put a temporary cul-de-sac turnaround over two of the lots. So there'll be lots that will be held in escrow until a future subdivision comes along and those roads are extended. So we won't be able to build on those lots until such a time as the neighbors move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on the presentations? Madam Clerk, I see none.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the presentation of resolutions. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that committee receive report 2022-148 for information as it pertains to file numbers 2016-19-03-2021 and AM-12-2021, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or debate on this resolution? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes, please.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public listed on the agenda. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item number 5, and I will now read the notice requirements into the record. Town of Pelham applications for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment, property east of Station Street and north of Summerside's Boulevard, known as Park Place West, File numbers 2016-19-01-2022 and AM-02-2022. Draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use of the property for 12 lots for single detached dwellings, 8 blocks for 16 semi-detached dwellings, 5 blocks for 18th Street townhouse dwellings, and 0.4595 hectares for future roadway. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 and 51 that Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed applications. The public meeting has been called to satisfy this request. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners within the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on June 17, 2022. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendments. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will also be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow shortly. If a person or body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they are not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed applications, and therefore any comments received will be considered by Council. To you, Mr. Mayor, we again have Shannon Larocque with us, and Shannon, you may proceed with your presentation.
Okay. Ms. Larocque, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This public meeting is for a development known as Park Place West. The applications are for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. This property is located east of Station Street and south of Highway 20, north of Summersides Boulevard. This property is made up of a number of rear yards of residential properties that front on Station Street. These property owners have sold the rear of their lands to the developer, and now they're subject to this draft plan of subdivision. The subdivision application would create 12 lots for single detached dwellings, 8 blocks for a total of 16 semi-detached dwellings, 5 blocks for a total of 18 street townhouse dwellings, along with the associated future road. The zoning bylaw amendment application would rezone the property to a site-specific residential 2 to allow the single detached dwellings, and site-specific residential multiple 1 zones that would allow the semi-detached dwellings and the street townhouse dwellings. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. It shows an extension of Shaw Avenue, which is a future road that would connect with Summersides Boulevard in the conditionally approved Park Place South subdivision. And it also connects with Norgate Way, which is another road connecting with Summersides Boulevard in the conditionally approved Park Place South subdivision. The proposed single detached dwellings are located along the west side of the future Shaw Avenue, and the semi-detached dwellings are located along the east side. And the future street townhouse dwellings would happen along the west side of the future Norgate Way. And for context, I think this will help. I know a number of people were having a hard time figuring out where exactly this property is because none of these roads exist yet. But this sort of gives you a better idea in terms of where Summersides Boulevard and Station Street are with respect to this development. You can see Park Place South, again, conditionally approved by council, shown in orange. This current development, Park Place West, shown in yellow, and the conditionally approved Park Place North, shown in green. And this area here is the future park and the watercourse naturalized channel. In terms of the planning context for this property, it too is within the settlement area and the delineated built up area and the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. This is land that is encouraged to have a number of different housing options and make use of existing services. Of course, intensification and redevelopment promoted in these areas. The region's official plan designates this property as being within the urban area and the designated built-up area. This area is to accommodate a range of different land uses, and it's the focus of where residential and employment development is to happen in the region over the long term. The minimum intensification target is 15% of all development in the town annually to occur within this area. And the town's official plan designates this property as East Font Hill low density residential. The East Font Hill low density residential designation permits single and semi-detached dwellings, and it does also permit street townhouse dwellings as long as they're not more than 60% of all of the units in the subdivision. These lands are part of Neighborhood 1 in East Font Hill, and it's intended that these lands develop at a minimum gross density of 57 persons and jobs per hectare. The town zoning bylaw zones the property agricultural, and the request is for site-specific residential 2, residential multiple 1 zones that would permit the uses in the subdivision. These charts detail the site-specific asks for these lands. There would be site-specific allowances for the front yard. They are asking for 4 meters to the front face of the building and 6 meters to the garage, a side yard of 1.2 meters, and a rear yard of 6 meters. The site-specific residential multiple 1 zone for semi-detached dwellings, there is a request to change the minimum lot frontage to 7.8 meters, the minimum front yard to 3 meters to the building face and 6 meters to the garage, to reduce the interior side yard to 1.2 meters and the exterior side yard to 3 meters, and finally to reduce the rear yard to 6 meters. And the site-specific residential multiple 1 regulations for the street townhouse dwellings, there is a request to reduce the frontage for an interior lot for a unit that's attached only on one side down to 7.5 meters, to allow for a 7.5 meter frontage for a lot, for a corner lot, a minimum lot area of 170 square meters per unit. Again, a reduction to the front yard down to 3 meters to the building face and 6 meters to the garage, 3 meters for an exterior side yard, which is a corner side, and 1.2 meters on an interior side yard, or 0 meters to a common wall, and 6 meter rear yard, and finally request to delete the requirement for the planting strip between the R1 and R2 zone and the RM1 zone permitting street townhouses. There are a couple of general provisions being requested to be exempt for this subdivision. One of them is with respect to the daylighting triangle. And the request is that the daylighting triangle not apply for corner lots in this subdivision. And that's really related to the fact that the boulevards are quite large, and there are already setbacks that ensure adequate setbacks from the lot line, and so no visual obstructions for drivers looking to navigate the corners. The other site-specific ask under the general provisions is with respect to porches and balconies, steps and patios. So the ask is that they could be 2 meters from the front lot line or the corner side lot line, and 4.5 meters to the rear lot line, as long as they're not more than 2 meters above ground. And that uncovered porches or patios and decks could be within 1.2 meters of a rear or side lot line, as long as they're not more than 0.3 meters above the ground. Comments have been received on these applications as well from the region. They indicated they had no concerns or objections with these applications, provided that the draft plan conditions that they've requested are implemented. Enbridge Gas requested standard conditions of approval. Canada Post had no conditions or concerns. Public Works provided some technical comments to be included as conditions of draft plan approval and future detailed engineering design. And a couple of comments were received from members of the public following preparation of this presentation. Those were from Hummel Properties, who expressed their support on the basis that it provides additional housing types, respects approved road networks in the area, and is good planning in their opinion. And Bill Heska, he asked some questions about where parking would be provided in the subdivision, about how the road network would be connected, and where future residents would have access to parkland. And planning staff did provide a response to Mr. Heska, so he has responses to his questions. A number of technical reports were provided with these applications, including a planning justification report, stage 1, 2, and 3 archaeological assessments, an environmental noise feasibility study, and a functional servicing report. And digital copies of the reports are available through the planning division if anyone wishes to receive a copy for review. And no decisions are being made tonight. No recommendations are coming forward. We will listen to all comments received and consider them when we're preparing a recommendation report for council's consideration in the future. If anyone wishes to receive notices on this application or has questions following tonight's meeting, please contact me at extension 319 or by email slarock@pelham.ca. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaRock, for your presentation. I will turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe that we have the agent, Mr. Kernahan, and the applicants, Mr. Vartanian and Mr. Gonyu from Mountain View with us this evening. And I do believe that Mr. Kernahan has a presentation to share.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. As you've heard, my name is Matt Kernahan, and I represent Mountain View Development, Niagara, who own the Park Place West property. And I've made applications for the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision on their behalf. I intend to provide a very brief presentation this evening, as staff's already done a very thorough job of explaining the ins and outs of this application too. So if I might, I'm just going to share my screen. See if I have some better luck than my colleague here with respect to providing my presentation. So as you've already seen in Ms. LaRock's presentation, this slide provides some context for the location of the development. In particular, it shows the location of Park Place West, which is shown in yellow. As you've heard, the Park Place North development is shown in green. The real intention here is to demonstrate how Park Place West is a logical extension of the Park Place South conditionally approved subdivision, which is shown in orange. Park Place West includes an extension of Shaw Avenue through the development to connect it with Norgate Way. It's our thought that these three developments serve to implement the land use plan for the East Fond Hill secondary plan in this part of the neighborhood quite effectively. This is an excerpt of the draft plan of subdivision that's been color-coded to show the location of the three types of dwellings within the plan. The area shaded in yellow is where the 12 lots for single detached dwellings will be located. These dwellings, as you've heard, back onto existing dwellings on Station Street. The subject lands, or the Park Place West lands, were severed from these properties that front onto Station Street. Peach-colored area on the right side of the road, internal to the subdivision, is where the semi-detached dwellings will be located. There are 8 blocks for a total of 16 semi-detached dwellings proposed within the subdivision. Lastly, the light purple area is the location of the street townhouses. This area will include 18 townhouse dwellings fronting onto Norgate Way, which is a roadway which will be developed in conjunction with the Park Place South subdivision. This slide shows a conceptual plan for the development. The proposed buildings are shown in tan, with driveway locations being shown in gray. The road extension is shown in white, and the landscaped areas and trees are all shown in green throughout the plan. And for now, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll leave it at that and open it up to any questions that Council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kernahan, for your presentation. Turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public speakers on this file. However, I can confirm that it is 6:25 p.m. and we've also not received any emails. Therefore, if you wish, you may close the public portion of the meeting and move to committee input.
Okay, thank you. We will indeed close the public portion, and I will turn to council and councilors for any comments or questions on the presentations from either the planning department or the applicant. Any questions or comments?
Sorry, I would just ask Mr. Kernahan if he could stop sharing his screen. Thank you.
There we go. Council is back. And Councillor Court.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions, and the first question is the number of trees. Does anyone know the number of trees or the mature trees on these lots, and are we going to try to save as many trees as possible? Or are we going to strip everything down like the lots beside it?
And who wants to answer that? Perhaps we'll go to the applicant, perhaps?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that the site currently does not have many trees on it at this point in time, that they've been removed already.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, on the North Gateway, you're adding a roadway which will go over an active stream. Has anybody looked to see if there's any fish specimens or wildlife that live in that active stream? And how are we going to go about it? Are we building a bridge, or we're just going to cover it in and 50 years from now say we made a mistake?
And again, I will turn to Mr. Kernahan.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the Park Place North development includes the construction of the roadway over that engineered watercourse. That watercourse was relocated or was constructed some time ago, and it doesn't contain any fish habitat that we're aware of. These applications were reviewed by the Conservation Authority to confirm that. A detailed design of the actual crossing has not yet been completed. That'll be done as part of the Park Place North subdivision, but my anticipation is that it will maintain an open culvert over which a road will be constructed.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kaur. Any other questions or comments for the presenters? I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to either Ms. LaRocque or Mr. Kernahan. Are the proposed site-specific zone regulations consistent with that of Park Place South, or are there changes to this?
Who wants to tackle that? Oh, because I see Mr. Kernahan. Go ahead, sir.
So generally speaking, they're very similar to Park Place South. I can think of one deviation, which is with respect to that site triangle. I don't have the Park Place South zoning regulations in front of me at this point, but I can tell you they were formulated from the same template. I can tell you that because I requested both of them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On the requested site-specific RM1 zone, the minimum lot frontage, the request is to go from 19 meters down to 7.8 meters. You know, this is something I've said in the past. It sounds to me like a massive cash grab. trying to jam in as many houses as in as small a space as possible. 7.8 meters is a very narrow lot. It doesn't provide, front yard space, backyard space. It's just too small.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. Kernahan, any comments on that?
Mr. Mayor, I guess what I would offer is that the zoning permissions as of right would require a very large lot size for a semi-detached dwelling, which wouldn't be very efficient use of the land. We're proposing here are semi-detached dwellings that have an approximate width of 6 meters, and the intention of the lot frontage reduction is to provide for an additional 1.5 meters plus on the side of that unit to provide an adequate side yard. It's say that we don't develop a lot of semi-detached dwellings, but at the request of staff, we've included some in this development to provide some variety and to comply with or conform to the secondary plan, and lot sizes are generally consistent with what's required for a semi-detached dwelling.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the word efficiency, but efficiency and livability are two different things. It doesn't, I know things are very expensive, and these houses will be expensive, even though they are semis. And I don't see them as being a livable alternative to raise a family, and the lots are too small.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I will turn to Councillor Stewart. Any other questions or comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to the presentation of resolutions. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur that committee receive report 2022-151 for information as it pertains to file numbers 2016-19-01-2022 and AM-02-2022 regarding Park Place West, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, comments on the resolution presented? Not seeing any. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on the motion presented? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. I will begin the vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Not seeing any. Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 6, being adjournment. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart that the special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion of adjournment? Not seeing any. Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, you may gavel at your meeting.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Everybody.